Here are some excerpts from Telecare Corporation's 2011 Administrator and Corporate Manager meeting recently held in Oakland, California. Faith Ritchie, Telecare's Director of National Marketing, talks about the impact of new healthcare legislation on the Telecare Corporation.
But basically, roughly 32 million more people will have health insurance of some form, and with it, they will have a behavioral health benefit. So that's a big deal, right? I mean, and people mentioned earlier parity, right? We had the Wellstone-Domenici federal law around parity a few years ago. Health reform made note of that earlier legislation. They made sure that these new 32 million would also come under parity. So the Medicaid expansion population and this insurance population, the mental health, behavioral health benefit has to have equity with the physical health benefit. So this is a lot of money coming into behavioral health. It's still kind of murky, but the estimates are somewhere between 16 and 25 billion bucks a year. So we know a lot of people are going to suddenly have Medicaid. We have questions about what this population will look like. We know many of them will have mild to moderate mental health conditions. So that's important in our field, but perhaps less important to Telecare because, of course, we focus on the seriously mentally ill. So, one of our questions is, in this Medicaid expansion group, how many are going to be seriously mentally ill? And you can help us answer that because, frankly, we don't know the answer to that question yet. With Medicaid expansion, we could have something I call behavioral health light, right? So think of more traditional insurance where you get 10 outpatient visits and 10, acute days, and, they're checking those off. It is possible the new Medicaid expansion population will get a behavioral health light benefit. We don't know yet. It's still kind of murky and stuff's still getting written, and this is really going to get decided state by state. The National Council did publish something that suggested that states could define their benefit based on disability. So if you're disabled in our kind of traditional population, you could get the full Medicaid benefit. That's a critical question for Telecare because, of course, for our services, we're going to care about the folks that are disabled from an SMI condition, and we need the full Medicaid benefit. So still waiting to see what happens there. I think the takeaway is lots of new people with Medicaid. How many will be SMI adults is one question. The second question is, what will their benefit be? So those are some things to hold in your mind. Some of the examples of the money that's out there, and you may know about these. SAMHSA initially put out a RFP, and what they were interested in funding were physical health care providers being cited in a behavioral health clinic and helping our mental health clients get better physical health care. And then there's a bunch of money for this concept of medical homes. And the terminology, frankly, that we prefer in mental health is person-centered healthcare homes. And the idea is it's kind of enhanced primary care in a sense. But again, it takes this team and it wraps around the client and it calls for follow-through, that kind of thing. It's not just the doctor working with the client. And they're offering 90% match, so although in Nebraska that's not quite enough, but in most states that's very exciting. 90% funding for 2 years for people who want to do pilots. So we're hoping it takes a state plan amendment. We really hope that California goes after that. I know Washington's very interested. They've been piloting medical homes for about 18 months now. So we think there may be opportunities in Washington as well. The other thing in federal reform is there's been a huge increase in funding in the community health centers. So that's the FQHC, Federally Qualified Health Center system, $11 billion. So when Rich's partner in LA, the LA Christian Health Centers, the reason they're expanding and going after grants is because there's suddenly all this new money pouring into their system. What's happening kind of closer to home for Telecare, LA put out this RFP for a mobile health team. They are requiring a partnership with a federally qualified health center. So this is now. It isn't tomorrow. It really is right now. And I imagine you're hearing, I don't know all that you're hearing, but I imagine you're hearing about things happening locally. I know counties are very interested in integration.
Keynote speaker Pat Deegan introduces Common Ground, a new technology being piloted at several Telecare programs.
Common Ground helps people prepare a one-page report and to bring it to their appointment with the psychiatric practitioner. At its most basic, Common Ground helps to unleash the power of consumer survivors to express ourselves within the confines of the very short public sector mental health visit. It helps the whole care team hear the voice of the individual loud and very clearly. The 4 foundational principles on which I built Common Ground are personal medicine, power statements, the idea of decision support, and shared decision making. The term personal medicine, and personal medicines are the things that we do, not the things that we take. Personal medicines are the things that we do to create wellness in our lives. And this is the first foundational cornerstone of the Common Ground approach, personal medicine.
Pat's talk was followed by a short panel in which Telecare staff talked about integrating Common Ground into their own programs.
We've started completing personal medicine worksheets for ourselves, because you want to try it yourself first, and with our members. So we've completed, I think, about 140 out of 150 personal medicine worksheets with our members. There was so many personal medicine worksheets that you would see people right on the sides and on the back.
It really just meshes right in with what we do.
The beauty of this project is that it's not more work. It's actually, it makes life easier. It will make us more effective.
San Diego's really pretty tough, and they were thrilled that we were doing this. And to the point now where Telecare is being brought up in circles and venues that the county would have never mentioned us before.
Consumer activist Jane Mayer spoke about initiatives to bring spirituality into the recovery process.
One is the Spirituality 101, that's really to train providers on how to assess people that they're working with around mental health issues and do it in a way that's non-judgmental and goes with their choice. The second thing we did was a Mental Health 101, which is to train faith communities on how to be more welcoming and opening to people that have mental health issues. And the third major effort that we're trying to work on is developing a workbook on how to infuse spirituality practices in wellness programs.
Ann Baker, Telecare's president and CEO, sets the stage for a discussion about Telecare's future growth.
You know, historically, over our 20-year history, we've grown on average between 10 and 12%, which is really a good record. But one of the things that we've seen these last few years is everybody thinks we're growing, but we really have grown less. We've grown more like in the range of 3 to 5%. And on the one hand, you can say, well, that's pretty good given that the market was kind of falling apart and it seemed like we were in, this terrible. On the other hand, as an organization, to sustain the kind of investments and activity, we need to pick up that growth rate again and move back more towards, the 10% range. So I think the goal here today is to think about, well, how can we accelerate momentum around some of these initiatives so we can pick up that growth rate again? What about today is new? And one of the things I wanted to stress is there's not a lot about today that is not new. The initiatives that we're going to be talking about, securing our base business with public mental health agencies, expanding into new states, expanding within the states we're in, and expanding to new customers, is all stuff that you should be familiar with. It's been a priority for the last few years. What we're mainly trying to do is look at the initiatives around it and how we can build momentum around those initiatives. How can we accelerate what we're doing in this areas to achieve greater growth?
In a pre-recorded video, Joan Mizell shared a historical perspective on Telecare's strategic planning process and outlined Telecare's priorities for the immediate years to come.
Particularly during times of change and challenge, it can help the organization be a bit more proactive in charting its future directions. Telecare has undertaken 2 such efforts in the last 15 years. Each time there was a specific challenge that faced the organization and framed the planning process. The healthcare environment today holds both new opportunities and a great deal of uncertainty. Priority 1 is to maintain our revenue from California public health mental health agencies. Priority 2 is to leverage our market position in other states in which we already have a presence. Priority 3 is to grow by entering new states. And priority 4 is to continue the diversification with new customers, with new kinds of products and services. And a new priority 5 is to carefully track new opportunities which result from the new federal law and its implementation in various states and localities.
Here are a few excerpts from Telecare CFO Marshall Langfeld's discussion of corporate financial forecasts and one of the targets to maintain and grow our business.
So again, we're expecting smaller growth from our sort of core customer, that California Public Mental Health Agency, typically a county, and larger growth from the other areas, okay? But still very important, that core business that we're going to talk about as priority 1, strategies to maintain that and make sure that that doesn't shrink. Just in words, the targets, modest growth in the base from 138 million to 144 million. In the 16-bed MHRCs, we're expecting to grow about a program a year starting next year, and that's about $3 million a year. And acute crisis opportunities, Ross is going to talk about those. They're very specific things that we are aware of right now. We think those are, could generate about $7 million in revenue.
And when no one's looking and no one's aware, the little soldiers come out and do their work. And
when I do presentations at our managers' meetings, I always talk about the fact that the real success, when you think of people that you really value in whatever they do, they get return business again and again and again. And you can use any example, your hairdresser, person you get your car repaired from. People who do a good job, the way they really get the vote is they get the services again and again and again. And if you look at Telecare, although we have all these people standing up from things that we're doing today that we weren't doing years ago, there's also a lot of stuff that we've been doing for a very long time and been doing it very well.
And finally, during our open discussion at the conclusion, the subject of Telecare offering substance abuse treatment was discussed.
On your topic of substance abuse, I think 2 things. One is there is a lot of expertise within Telecare in depth on substance abuse treatment. So that's available. And clearly the federal government through CSAT is mandating patient recovery and patient recovery plans in the substance abuse field. So I think that the RCCS and CSATs and the federal government's view of recovery is very compatible.
I know one of the challenges, or one of the things Telecare has looked at all through the years, is what is our primary mission and how diluted are we going to want to get it. We were looking at doing crisis residential for DD, and it was really difficult to ascertain whether or not there was a primary mental illness, and the decision was, we're a mental health company, and we're not going to take this route because it really is too far off our mission. And I remember initially, because I have a great passion for the DD population, being unhappy about that decision, but ultimately seeing that kind of discipline is really a wonderful strength that Telecare has.
We moved to the idea of there being no door that's the wrong door. A lot of our counties have been talking about that for some time, that every door is the welcoming door. And if Telecare could become the place where you can come here because we can work with the people no matter what you have, that would be a very powerful statement.
Concept of no 2 doors was considered state of the art. And that if you were really espousing separating the treatment of co-occurring disorders into straight anything, straight mental illness, straight
substance abuse, that was not considered to be state-of-the-art practice or community standard. But that time was very brief, very, very brief. And in fact, it never really got implemented in a lot of places.
I think that Telecare is expert at providing the kind of services we provide now. And if we move into straight substance abuse service, we don't have a track record there. And we don't have, I mean, I'm not saying we don't have the expertise. I'm saying we don't have the product, we don't have the track record, and I'm not sure that we want to just jump in right away doing something like that.
It's not that we couldn't do the work. I know we could do the work. I know we have a lot of people with a lot of expertise in the room already. We could get additional people with expertise and shape it. I think the question becomes, how much of our attention does it take? And does it take us away from the other opportunities that we're talking about? I don't know the answer to that question, but I think it has to be assessed very carefully. And even though we have changed and we have broadened and we haven't stayed the same, we have been pretty clear about our mission to primarily the severely mentally ill.
And when no one's looking and no one's aware, the little soldiers come out and do their work. And when no one's looking and no one's aware, the little soldiers come out and do their work.
And our purpose statement, as most of you know, is that we exist to help people with mental impairments realize their full potential. And I remember we had this very long statement about whether we should use the word impairments or mental illness, and we decided to leave it impairments. And then about 10 years later, we developed our mission statement, which, you know, the purpose is forever, ever, ever, and our mission statement is goal-oriented. And we still use that mission statement, which is deliver and manage excellent services and systems of care for persons with serious mental illness. And so the focus has been for persons with serious mental illness, and our purpose statement has been broader. So this is kind of a structural, philosophical question that's at our core, if you think about it, because our mission statement, our purpose statement is broader, and our mission statement really has been focused on SMI. So I think that, you know, the dialogue has really been fascinating. We just need to think about how we use ourselves and what we really focus on. And if we can't just add one or two at the end. We really have to think about, you know, what can we really do as an organization in our focus?
For more information or PowerPoint slides from this conference, feel free to contact us here at Telecare Corporation.